and welcome to episode 79 of the Relationship Restaurant. We are Poppy and Jeff Spencer, delighted to have you with us today. We have a wonderful guest, a nice new friend that we've recently made, and Poppy's going to introduce our friend Vita.
Vita, we connected through a mastermind group that we're all involved with, and she is awesome. And we connected right away and brainstormed in several occasions. And so we're excited to have you, Vita. Vita Lagalla is a mom who helps women who, divorced women who need to let go of their past, and by teaching them the law of attraction principles. We'll get to that later.
Something that we're big fans of as well.
Yes. And to cultivate courage and confidence in creating their next chapter of their lives. So welcome, Vita.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Yeah, I think we kind of got started on this whole conversation. Poppy and I, of course, have done a lot of work with helping women in challenged relationships and wanting to move on and figure out how to move on. We've actually went as far as becoming family law mediators so we could help women with that process, and or just even understand that process at the very, very least. So we're delighted to have you and some of your journey to be shared with us.
So, one of the things that we talked about and we were catching up in the last few weeks or so is, how did you know or even decide that you were going to get divorced?
Well, it wasn't something that my ex and I sat down and talked about. Everything came about in, it goes back to the law of attraction. Everything kind of happens when you least expect it. And it's, I found out he was speaking to another woman. And I had that, he had told me about her. He went out to a bar with his friend, and they had a mutual friend, and they met. So he told me about the night that he had and the friend that he met. And I knew we were having marital problems because we had just moved to Florida. I wasn't working in my corporate job. I was a stay-at-home mom and a housewife. There was a lot going on. So I knew we were having problems because I had an internal struggle and he had struggles, and we just couldn't connect. So he told me about this person, but I never had a reason to not trust my ex. We met each other when I was 18 and he was 19. And we grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
He was my best friend. So I never had a reason to ever question anything he did. So I didn't think too much about it until he started being on his phone a lot. And at nighttime when he usually wasn't. And every time I would ask him, he would say, "Mind your business." And it started, I started noticing he would go out, and he would go out more with this guy. And intuition is a very powerful thing.
Yes, it is.
Not to be ignored.
Something we also study in Myers-Briggs personality assessments.
Yeah. When you learn to listen to it and tap into it, you start to see things differently, and it actually pushes you in a direction that you wouldn't take. So I woke up one morning and I had like bile in my throat. I felt really sick and I didn't know why. But looking back, it was probably all the feelings that I was storing inside of what could be going on.
Sure.
What is he doing? And I got this gut feeling to check our phone bill. And I never checked our phone bill. Everything was automatic.
Sure.
I went online and I looked at his line, and it was sickening to see the amount of times that by text he spoke to this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it started as early as 6:30 in the morning till 10 at night, constantly back and forth. So my reaction was, okay, I'm assuming it's her, but I don't know. And I don't know where it came from, where I got the courage, but I dialed the number and a woman answered, and I hung up. I'm like, oh shit, like this is a woman. Okay, what do I do next? And I didn't think. I called her again. And she said her name. And I didn't give her a chance to talk. And I said, listen, I know about you. I know about you've been divorced numerous times. You have 2 kids. So from one woman to another woman, can you please respect my marriage? We're having difficulties, but we cannot work on it if you are in the picture. So please respect that. And I hung up the phone.
So she never said anything.
She never said, I never gave her a chance to I ended the call and I went back to making dinner, and I still felt really sick. But my husband then came home. He went into his room to get undressed, to get ready for dinner. And I heard his phone ring. And I'm like, oh, crap. Because I'm just, scared now, because now I know he's talking to this woman.
It was her calling back?
She had called his friend, their mutual friend, and the mutual friend called him and told them what I did. And he came out and he said, how could you intercept in my relationships? And I said, what?
He going, wait a second. How could you, your relationships, you're married to me.
Yeah. And he's like, how could you do that? Why did you contact her? I said, you are my husband. We have a relationship. And I said, I know things aren't great. I know I am not acting in my best self, but neither have you. And for you to talk to somebody else constantly the way you have, that's not fair to me. And he went into the bedroom, packed a suitcase, and left, and never came back.
Wow.
He never came back to our home. So I didn't get that say where we sat down. I decided to file divorce papers because the interaction of when he left, it was full of anger. And with the law of attraction, the energy that you continually send out, you get back.
Sure.
Yes.
So he kept sending out. He was very angry with me because he got caught talking. He may not have had anything sexual yet that I know of, but he was having conversations with another woman while he was with me.
Yeah, an emotional affair.
It was absolutely an emotional affair at the very least.
At the least, right.
Yes. So in New York, I was the breadwinner, and we moved to Florida so I can stay home to be with the kids because he got a job here. So we left our friends, we left our family, had nobody here.
Your support system.
Friends here. I had no support system. And he walked out and he took the money from our bank account. And he basically said, it's not my responsibility to get you on your feet. And I said, okay, what am I supposed to do? Our kids are 4 and 2. He just left. Didn't think about the bills, anything, just left. So we constantly had a bickering back and forth. And to see the kids, he would just give me money whenever he saw them. It would be like $50. And I'm like, how am I going to buy groceries that way? He's like, I don't care. Figure it out. So he was already creating.
The best friend status had gone away here as well.
It was gone. I was his enemy. He called me a garbage can. He called me useless, a piece of shit. He doesn't care if I sleep in the car, if I end up on the street. It was really hurtful because he was my best friend. He was the person that I turned to for everything.
Wow.
And we were together. We knew each other for 17 years. And for him to treat me like that, it crushed me. And I was alone with these kids. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have that support system of people that understood, because the people that I made friends with here had families. They didn't understand what I was going through. They didn't understand my pain. They didn't understand it. They would come over and talk to me about gossipy things. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to breathe.
Yeah. You're on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You were in the basement.
You dropped right to the bottom there.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let's talk about social.
Yeah, let's go to dinner. I'm like, I need to pay my electric bill. Like, do you think I want to go to dinner tonight? Like, my head wasn't in that place, and they didn't understand that. And they were more into the gossip, talking about the other women or talking about what he did and wanting to know the details. And I was just trying to keep my head from drowning. So I would have 2 people that I spoke to a lot, and they were the 2 students that I met when I went to my coaching school prior. And everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
And if I had not gone to that coaching school to learn personal development and law of attraction, I wouldn't have had these 2 women by my side to remind me of my truth and my spiritual truth and the connection I had with myself. So when I couldn't get out of bed and I wanted to die and I didn't want to exist anymore, they would not say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be, they wouldn't say that. They would say, Vita, you know what to do. You're going to get up and you're going to brush your teeth today. You're going to get up and you're going to change your clothes. And they walked me through those steps. And I sat down in meditation one day and I said, just give me a sign on what I'm to do. What do I do? Because he's threatening money. There's only so much I can continue to do on my own, not working, taking care of 2 kids. What do I do? Do I file for divorce? And, in order to initiate any sort of child support, you have to file for divorce. You have to get some sort of action in place. So I sat there and I meditated and I connected, and all I did was ask, please show me the next steps. Please reveal to me what I need to know and do going forward. And I sat outside and I meditated. The next day, one of my friends called and she said, are you sitting down? And I said, what's up? She goes, well, someone saw him at a restaurant eating with this other woman. So it confirmed to me that he was with this other woman. Mm-hmm. And it confirmed to me that when he would FaceTime my kids, he was in her bed, because you could see when there's somebody else, the hair is sticking out,
shadow or something. Yeah.
Right. And I would always, you see it, but your mind doesn't want to believe it.
Right. The defense mechanisms that we all have built in want to protect us from these traumatic experiences.
And I still had hope. I was still, I follow the teachings of Abraham. And one of the things that she says is look for the positive aspects in someone when you're trying to pivot those negative thoughts.
That's beautiful. And I think it's a great mantra for anybody here who has that resentment and anger toward anybody, but especially an ex.
And it seems almost impossible to summon those positives when you're just getting
really hard
with nothing but negative.
In New York, I used to take martial arts and boxing. So automatically I wanted to punch her face, like that inner part of me wanted to just get really violent and hurt them because of the pain I was feeling, because I didn't know what was going on. I was alone. I had no support except for those two women. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave.
So did you get a sign when you meditated?
That was the sign, the phone call the next day. That was my sign. And I said, okay, he is with her. I'm still holding on to hope. I'm still holding on that he's going to come back.
But you had factual confirmation now.
I had factual confirmation that he was out with this person. He was moving on. He was starting to move over to another cell phone carrier. He was starting to release
and rebuild his life independently.
I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, I'm surprised you were actually at this point still holding on to hope that he might come back.
I really was. I was, because we had a family. They were 4 and 2.
Right.
How could you walk away from that? Like, if you hate me, whatever I did, I deserve to be sat down and say, listen, this is what we can do to move forward and make this easy to let go.
Right.
But he didn't do that.
I was just going to ask you if we could just go back just a few steps. You had said something that before the marriage, disintegrated, you had some internal issues that you struggled with. Would you be willing to share?
Yeah. So right before we moved to Florida, my dad had passed away. And he was an alcoholic, and we had a relationship where we didn't talk to each other for 10 years because he was drinking. My dad was very smart. He was an engineer. He was my biggest supporter. He was supportive. He wasn't the alcoholic that didn't go out and work. He was functional up until the last, the end of his days, and maybe the year before. But he always tried to provide for our family. He always gave us the best that he could, but his own demons took him, and he fed into this addiction. And when he had passed away, that's where my spiritual journey came about, because I forgave him. The day before he died, he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I had just given birth 3 months before that. So my hormones were going crazy. Sure. I went back to work after being on maternity leave. Everything hit me at once. And when he died, he mouthed to me, I love you. And I looked at him and I said, I love you and I forgive you.
Wow.
And the next day he passed away, and I wasn't with him because I was working. So what did Vita do? She went to work to mask her pain instead of, feeling what I felt and grieving. So when he died, I didn't handle that very well because I had years of suppressed emotion. This was before I learned about spirituality and law of attraction. So I suppressed everything. So Abraham talks about that cork underwater. If you keep pushing it underwater, what happens when you let go?
It's coming back up.
That's what happened to me when he died. And at that point, I was working all the time. I wasn't seeing my son, who was just 3 months old. And I started to create a vision to be home, to be there for him, to be that mom and to be that woman that wanted to be there for her child, and my things started to play out, and my ex got a job in Florida and we came here. But again, I had no support system. I left New York City to Florida. I worked with my company for over 14 years. So I went from having that security to relying on somebody else for my financial security. I went from being just him, my husband and I, to having our kid, who I enjoyed being home with him, but I felt like something was missing. I felt like there was more to doing laundry and cleaning and cooking and being at somebody's beck and call. I felt like something was missing. So I kept asking for a sign. And at the time we had found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So that was more responsibilities. And after she was born, the feelings of, okay, Vita, something is missing, but I didn't know what it was. And my husband, he came from, you've got to be home. This is your job. I get up and I go to work every day. That's my job. Your job is to be home and take care of the house. And, it could be he's half Italian, half Ukrainian. So that's what his mom did.
Sure.
And his dad went out and made the money. And I was stifled. And every time I would try to talk to him, even if I would say, listen, I want to go to the grocery store, but can I go by myself? Please. It was like a vacation for me. He would say, no, take one kid. I was
wow.
Okay, fine. I'll take one kid. Or I would say, can I sleep in? My sleeping in is 7:30, on the weekend. And he said, no, I need my rest. I worked all week. What did you do? And I was like, okay, what is happening here?
That's so common. We don't mean to laugh about it, but it is so common.
It is. Yeah.
That when husbands or partners do take that role at home to stay home and do everything that the woman does, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going back to work. This is too much.
It was because I felt like I wasn't having my sense of self.
No.
There was no me.
There was no validated for there was no validation for what you did.
No. And my ex-husband was the person who, if he said something, you shut up and you don't say anything back, because there's no point.
Right.
You can argue until you're blue in the face, but his word goes and that's it. So I suppressed these feelings again. And I kept asking, before I knew about law of attraction, I was asking for these signs. I was using it and not even knowing it. And then I found my coaching school, and it was to get a free session with a coach. And I was like, It's free. I don't have to ask him for anything.
Right.
I don't have to, I'll check it out. And I got 3 sessions with her, and we did law of attraction exercises. And I felt the changes in myself. I felt myself feel better. I felt myself taking the time for me, like even demanding it almost. And it felt so good.
It's funny. I'm just imagining a woman listening to our podcast here, or in video version too, and thinking to themselves, like, this sounds so much like my relationship and what I'm going through. And they're probably also going, but what is this law of attraction thing she's talking about?
I know. And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. Law of attraction, I discovered about 20 some years ago. And I also was like, I would fly out of bed in the morning. I was so excited because all of these good thoughts and feelings that you choose, these are choices that we make about our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And I remember first sharing it with Jeff a little bit, and but even I get tripped up with it, right? And so there was a time that I was venting about something, and I was gurring and being a pirate about it. And Jeff just sat there just kind of smiling at me. And I looked up and I caught his expression. I was like, okay, I know, I get it. I just want to vent for about 5 more minutes, and I promise I'll circle back around and choose the next best feeling or thought. And that's really what law of attraction is. But it's just just give me this 5 minutes of, venting and ranting, and then I'll come back.
Women in your position, Vita, the concept of the next best feeling or thought is almost even hard to wrap your head around.
Right.
A good feeling, because you're feeling so, lost. You've lost your voice. You've lost yourself. You wonder what happened. How did I get here?
Right.
Yeah. that was a question I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be home with my kids. I'm grateful to be here for them. But where is Vita? Where did she
Right.
go? Where is that
Right.
lively person that was happy and, wanted more from life? And I said, it has to be better than this. There has to be something out there that can give me that purpose, that can fill this void.
And
And
And you found her.
yeah. And it's so interesting because with law of attraction, it isn't just necessarily like, let's put on a happy face.
Right.
It's a process. And I always use it as like a timeline. When I used to teach psychology in the classroom, I would actually put an emotional timeline on the whiteboard and say, okay, how many of you are in despair or disappointment? And then you just go to the next best feeling thought, which could be revenge or resentment or anger. And because we always say that too, in anger, there's movement.
You're empowered.
You can do something. You can get out of bed. Even if you're angry, you can get out of bed. I mean, there are lots of times in my younger years, I used to I'm going to clean the whole freaking house because I was angry, right? And you get that physiological surge, and then it can project you to the next thought or the next best feeling.
One of the tools that Poppy and I have created and used with so many of our clients and so many other, we know a lot of professionals that have started using the tool as well.
A lot of therapists.
Our emotional clock, because the number 5 setting is anger, which is the last setting on the clock before the 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock is that magical moment you're describing right now, where you're like, that's it. I've got to do something. I cannot keep doing the way these things are. I have to change this. I have to, in your case, move forward with the divorce and to find myself again. And that's a very empowering feeling.
Yeah. And it takes, you are angry because you look at this person who's supposed to be your partner and you're like, do you not see me? Do you not see me?
You had the same sort of definition as what a best friend is, right? And it was sort of like, well, a best friend would never just walk out, right?
No.
And so you're challenging all of your values and belief systems. And it was like, whoa, wait, these weren't aligned. They're not aligned right now. What's going on?
Yes. And one of the things that I remember when we were starting to have these problems in our marriage is resentment would build up because there was no safe place to talk to him.
Right.
And what happened was I was moving this way and he was moving this way.
Right.
So in your head, sometimes you'll joke about divorce with other people. Like I would joke and say, the only way I'm going to get a break is if I get a divorce because he'll have the kids and I can do my own thing. Right. You joke about it, but you really don't mean it because I didn't mean to end our family. Like I didn't want that. I had kids. I chose to get married and have kids with him for a reason. But you joke about it and you say these things, but you always have at least in the back of my mind was we could work on this. This is what marriage is, right?
Yes.
You work on it. And it was just built up over time. And every time, we would get into a fight, I would just not be seen or heard. And it was like, where am I? So when he decided to create this relationship with this other person, I didn't know how deep it was going to go.
Right.
I didn't know that he would walk away from everything and leave me to figure it out with nobody around.
Right. And I think just going back to something that you said, when you become more empowered spiritually, emotionally, maybe mentally as well, that is very threatening to some people, whether male or female, and culturally as well. It's very threatening to have someone be like, whoa, wait a minute. You're the wallflower here.
Yeah, you're not allowed to be that person. In fact, I loved it was awful. The first impression you got back when you discovered this and challenged him with this was that you were the one who was wrong. This is none of your business. You're not allowed to pry into my secret world here. You're the one doing something wrong. It's like, which completely just flips all responsibility and just even moral standards just upside down. You're like, what are you talking about? You're the one having an affair. This is
this is something, and of course, because no physical or sexual behavior may have taken place, a lot of people will discount it and dismiss
It's
it as
nothing.
like
It's nothing.
it's just virtual, it's just emotional, and they don't get that's also infidelity right
Yes.
there.
When you're
And
speaking to somebody else at 9:30 at night, when you're sitting next to me, watching a show, a TV
Mhm.
show, that's not right. When somebody texts you as soon as you leave the house to go to work, that's not right.
right, no,
You
I
know?
mean it's absolutely, and but as I say, Vita, there are so many women who do not have that inner resolve and strength to continue to fall in this horrible cycle of like gaslighting and manipulation and making you take accountability for the problems in the relationship. So what do you give advice to your members in your group and your women who don't have that like inner strength, or they can't access it? They have it, they just can't access it.
Well, the one thing I always talk to my students and my members about is you have to be aware of what you're thinking and know that in a marriage, it takes two people.
Right.
So I am, you know, I'm not going to say that I didn't treat him the best because I'm sure I didn't. I was distancing myself when I put up those walls and those
Mhm.
barriers. I wasn't my best self. I wasn't the best wife, and neither was he. It takes two people, not one
Absolutely.
person. And I always, they'll always say, well, he cheated, he cheated. Yes, but what was your role in that too?
Right.
And that's the hardest thing for people to hear is that you have a role in what happened. The only difference is you didn't have a voice. You had a role
Yes.
in what happened, but you didn't have a voice, whether it's
Well,
communicating or
right.
walking away.
And see, the voice part comes in is because both of us are twice divorced, and I know 100% I left both of those marriages because of my children and because of who I was role modeling to them. I didn't like who I was, and I didn't have the toolbox, the communication toolbox, to be
Right.
able to articulate in a way that would be understood and accepted for what I was saying.
Yeah.
And to be able to be respected for that.
Oh,
And
Poppy,
so I had a voice, it just didn't resonate with my partners as well.
and what Poppy's also saying, just the thought of wanting to get a divorce for the sake of your children, and that often just blows people's minds as well, because people
Yeah.
say, well, don't you have to stay in the marriage for the children?
Right.
And this is something that we know often there's just things that have been drilled into us, often religious mantras that says you
and
can't.
we're very religious.
Yeah,
we go to church.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and we heard, many different women have said this after the fact when they've made this transition. They've gotten out of these very unhealthy and these relationships that have beaten you down. They
Yeah.
realize that that's the last thing they wanted to be modeling for their children, because that will absolutely happen.
Yeah. I
Children
saw it
grow
with
up
my
seeing that.
mom.
Yep.
My mom stayed with my dad for as long as she
Too
did
long,
for
yeah.
us.
Yes.
And I said, but Mom, we saw you cry. We saw the fights. We
Right.
saw this. It would have been easier to walk away. She goes, you don't understand. It was difficult for me to do that.
Right. It's difficult for anybody to do it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the even in one of my marriages, we never fought. It was just a very silent disconnect that happened, and so there wasn't a lot of that. But I realized as my children, and I have 3 daughters and 1 son, as my children looked at me, they did not see a strong equal partner in the relationship, in the marriage, and that was like not okay as a parent.
Right.
So many friends were and families saw so much of what the spark and the joy and the what makes Poppy the wonderful woman that I love. It wasn't there. It was a lot of these things had been kind of squelched, like you said, the voice.
Yeah.
No, but I think I nobody did that to me.
Right, it
I
just
allowed
happened.
that to
Right,
happen. I don't blame my exes. In fact, we are very good friends with my exes, and we honor them. They are the father of my children, and
we share now grandchildren together. So we need to be able to be on good terms.
So we all through those times we had joint birthday parties and graduations and everything. When they were little, we'd have them come over for baptism, confirmations, anything. We would always include them for those big events.
And I think if you can do that, that's great. Like the vision I have with my ex is, okay, I'm not the right person for you, but these kids deserve to see us communicate with respect because you are, he said things that was hurtful to me, the mother of his children.
Yes.
And there were times where I hated him in the divorce process with the fighting, and I would cry in the car and I would scream because of how much I was hurt. But I look at him and I chose him to have kids with. And even though he did these things to me, there's still good parts of him.
Right.
And I may not be the one, and I know I'm not the one for him. And I'm grateful for where I am now. But it doesn't mean that my kids have to see us fight, which is unfortunately what was the whole divorce process.
Right.
And, but that was because as I'm working on my journey, he went from our house to someone else.
Yes.
There was, and there was I could see it. There was no working out in him.
No,
there was no processing, letting go.
And many people, men especially, are very afraid to do any kind of introspection and work. And where am I responsible in this relationship? It's a, and culturally, it's a big thing too.
Yeah.
It just doesn't come easily to them, and it's frightening. It is scary for them. So if you can understand that, you can have a little bit of detached appreciation for where he's going through, and then I think personally that helps diffuse the anger a little bit. It's like, oh, I accept where you are. This is how you grew up. You don't have the courage. We always talk about courage.
It always comes down to that.
You don't have the courage to examine these things. You're internal, as you said. You don't have the courage to do that, but you do. Vita does. Do.
I did. That was connecting back to me.
Right.
I wanted to ask you because you the only thing you said one thing that was kind of initially holding you back from considering the divorce and split, that really was that hopefulness. Because so many women in your position, will hear and see all these things that you're describing, and they'll say, yeah, I know, but, and they have all these fears that are queued up. And so besides that little hopeful voice in the back of your head saying, well, maybe we can get it back, were there other fears initially that were stopping you from moving forward in this process?
It was really just, I wanted my husband back. I didn't think of anything else. I wanted my husband back. I wanted our life. I wanted, to go to therapy, which was something we talked about. We just didn't do. And I wanted to work on our relationship. Him being gone, he was everything I knew. My identity was rolled up into him.
Sure.
We met so young. So that's all I thought about. It was, okay, I'm going to give him time. I'm going to give him time to do what he needs to do with this girl, and I'll be right here for him when he comes back. And
so
that's not a healthy thought to have.
No, but I mean, when you think about it, it's like you wanted your husband back, but you had already started to grow. And so it's like, you're like, now you're the square peg in the round hole.
The genie's out of the bottle now.
Yeah, you're trying to, you can't unlearn and ungrow from where you've come. So you want your husband back, but he's still the same person.
He's still the same, and I was holding on to comfort.
Yes. Okay, good. That's what I wanted you to get to.
Yeah, it was the comfort. I didn't want our relationship the way it was, but in that moment of chaos, I was holding on to the comfort.
Right.
I was holding on to the things that we did together as a family and all the hopes and dreams we talked about doing with our kids. Yeah. I was holding on to that. So when I look back on the ultimate divorce making decision, it was really when I connected to my truth of my spirituality and my inner guidance, because everyone was telling me all different things, that he's going to come back when he finds out that she's just a toy or the grass isn't greener. And
you can't get divorced.
Yeah. Why are you going to get divorced? You guys just moved there. You guys are best friends. You've been together forever. You've been through so much. You're going to get back together. When I let all those voices go and I connected back to, guidance, show me what I need to know to get to the next step. And once I filed those papers, yes, it was an angry battle. He did not like it. because
No.
of what was happening.
Sure.
And I didn't like it, having to go through that. It was almost a freeing kind of thing because I knew in that moment I was going ahead with my journey.
Yes.
And he was still stuck, and even when he was with this woman, they found ways to harass me. They found ways to talk about me and to make fun about the law of attraction and to make fun of
all the time. People will question us all the time when we talk about law of attraction. Like you're preaching to the choir here because
this is woo-woo stuff. It's a little too weird,
and it's not based in science. And it's like, well, actually it is, because if you understand the human brain and how it works, you can absolutely choose your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. And it's like gravity. We're surrounded by it, but do we sit down over coffee and talk about it?
Right.
No.
So when we try to explain it to people, we'll say, have you ever walked into a room of 20 people, not now during COVID, but you walk into a room of 20 people and you just feel like this bad energy or tension or something. And so that's just starting to pay attention to that. Most people will dismiss it and not even think about it. But when you ask them to pause and think about it, they kind of get it, right?
They do, but they're very closed-minded to it. Yeah. And then when they see how it applies in their life, they're like, oh, this is a real thing.
Yeah. So share us a case study that you, in working with your women, where you have, found someone that turned the corner on their belief using the law of attraction, or they have aha moments or something.
Well, the biggest one was me, having that big aha moment. And then when I teach it in the group, and I always say it's good to let out what you're feeling, but not to sit in that place. So if you find the next feeling thought, and they're like, why do I want to find the next feeling thought? I have no place to go. I'm getting divorced. I have no money. I said, because when you do that, you're going to feel better. When you feel better, you're going to make better decisions. When you make a decision from a negative place, nothing is going to work out for you because you're going to do it from that negative energy.
That is spite.
Right.
Yes. So when you look for the next feeling thought, even if it's to get a coffee, go for a walk, something so simple, even if you can't reach for that thought, do something that makes you feel better. You're going to feel better. And then you're going to look from a different standpoint. Wait a second. I'm more empowered now to make decisions.
Right.
From that feeling place.
Or I'm more empowered right now than I was yesterday. It's even just a day, because so many people get caught up in the overwhelming, oh my gosh, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's just no, you just have to see a couple feet in front of you.
Yes. And one of my students, she is in my private Facebook group, and she came to me. She came from a really bad relationship and a really bad childhood, and that rolled over into the relationship that she was in. And she's like, I'll never find somebody. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough.
No, you're right. You won't.
She kept saying this, and we talked and we got clear on the things that she wanted. She loved, antiquing. She loved working on her garden. And she started shifting, and we started getting clear on what her next chapter looked like just by feeling good. I said, what could you do each day to feel a little bit better than the next day? What could you do each day to move you forward to that chapter that you're creating, getting your garden pretty, starting to eat out in a cafe. This is pre-COVID, but starting to go out and meet people by yourself. What does that look like to you? And she wanted a love. She wanted to feel loved and to be loved. And she started giving that to herself. Beautiful. With the little things.
I was just going to say, it has to start first with you.
It started, and she started to surround. So in her feed, her Facebook feed would always be about hurt and all the pain. And she started shifting it to more uplifting things. And a year ago, we had this conversation, and she started dating somebody 5 months ago.
Beautiful.
And he does all the things that we had worked when she had written out what her version of love looked like. She's living it. And it makes me so happy to hear that when you do the work, not just say you're going to do it, but actually take the action steps in doing the things to change those thoughts, your life will change.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So how are you doing with the co-parenting now?
It's not always easy. It's difficult.
Did he marry that?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did marry the emotional affair.
He married her very, very quickly. Right
Not
after.
surprising, sure.
Yeah. And it was their soulmates and their love and all these different things. And I was like, well, what was I then?
Yeah, I thought I was the whole time.
You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's okay.
She had told him, I thought I was going to die alone. I was like, because he would tell me these things and I'm like, okay, you just met her, but okay, whatever.
No.
I'm not going to get there, but the co-parenting we have, I always try to look at him with respect. I always try to look at him with that love that I created two human beings with, because I want my children to know that. I don't want my children to feel any negative energy of hate, because I am hurt. There's a part of me that will always be hurt for that life.
Sure.
But it's not going to prevent me from creating the life I have now. But I look at him with that, and it doesn't always work with him. He's yelled at me in front of baseball games with my son. He's befriended friends that I had here through the divorce who knew of my pain, who knew of what he did. They're all friends with him now. We don't talk.
So you lost those friends.
I lost those friends, and I don't want them back because they're not the people I would surround myself with.
But you've gained new ones that are more authentic and work for you now.
Yes. As I developed that clarity on me, on what I wanted in the next chapter, I started surrounding myself with those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And they were uplifting, and it feels good. So
that's why we like Vita, honey. That's why we connected so well with Vita.
It's the energy thing is a real thing. It's a real thing.
A couple things before we go. Share a story about what happened. You touched on it earlier with us. Your ex's wife parented your child in a way that wasn't cool with you.
Well, she's always gotten involved, right? That's the difficulty about parenting, is her sticking herself in.
Right.
And my son has said that she will text me posing to be their dad. And I can know by the responses. I know when you're with somebody for 17 years, you know how they speak. And my ex is very Brooklyn-born New Yorker. And then the messages would come through, and I was like, he knew? Like, that doesn't sound like him. But she's always been involved. And my partner, unfortunately, gets involved because he sees how the interaction is, and he's upset by that. So recently, I had a virtual conference last weekend, and it meant something to me. And my kids were with him, and my daughter, on a break, I had spoken to her, and she said, I have to tell you something. And I said, what? And my ex's new wife has two kids, an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Okay.
And they hang out a lot with the 11-year-old. And she said, she told me this, and this. And it was of sexual content. And my daughter's 6. Oh. And I said, okay, well, did you tell dad? She goes, no, I want you to tell him, I'm scared. So she walks the phone over to him, and I begin to tell him. And as I'm telling him, his face looks, when it's my ex and I, we can communicate fine. But his face looked like what the hell? What's coming out of your mouth? That's how inappropriate it was. And she grabs the phone, his wife, and she goes, what are you saying? My daughter would never say something like that. And then she starts talking to my daughter, and I can hear, she's like, when did she tell you this? Why didn't you come to us? And making her feel very uneasy. Yeah. Because I can hear it in my 6-year-old. So my ex,
it's scary.
It was, because she's obviously afraid to say something, and this is how she's going to come at her for sharing something that her daughter said to her. And it wasn't the first inappropriate thing her daughter has said to her. I just didn't bring it up with their dad yet, because it's very difficult to have those conversations when he's in the same household with her.
Right. Sure.
It's that, that, and he'll always take her side. So whatever I say, I'm wrong. So she started saying these things to my daughter, and my ex wasn't saying anything. So I said, listen, because she said to my daughter, what do you want me to do about it now? And I looked, and I was like, well, you can't do anything about it now, but going forward, maybe you can have a conversation with her to not talk to my daughter about these things. And she hung up on me.
Wow.
And she hung up on me. So normally, because
maybe they are soulmates.
I think they are, really. Everyone said, oh, they would break up with, a few months. And I said, no, I think they're going to be together forever, because of how their energies are together.
They're aligned. It's law of attraction.
Yeah. So she hung up, and normally, because of the interaction with this woman, I would get upset, and I would be like, how dare she? Because I already feel disrespected that, she created this relationship with a married man, regardless of what was happening in the marriage. It happened while we were married.
Right,
Mhm.
of course.
So that stuff that I'm working through in trying to
Sure.
heal that energy. And I reframed it, and I said, Vita, when you focus on that situation, your energy is depleted.
Yeah, you feel
Like,
bad.
I feel drained. I feel exhausted. I feel angry. And I said, take a minute and look at what you want this weekend. What does it mean to you? And I was excited about the weekend. My energy was aligned. And I said, you know what? You're going to address this with with Kayla and her dad when he drops them home. There's nothing you could do about it now.
Oh, good.
Because they're together. You're going to refocus back on what this weekend means to you, what your family goals are, what your relationship is with your partner, and be thankful that you have a supportive partner.
Mhm.
And all these things started coming, and it started to adjust my energy.
I love that. I like
it
that
was-
tweaking. I mean, and it didn't take you very
Yes.
long, I bet, right?
No, it was like that, because I started to feel good
Beautiful.
again.
Yeah.
And that's the choosing the thoughts. And the thoughts I chose was what the weekend meant to me, having my partner as a support system who was watching our baby, supporting me, who was allowing me to engage this
Yeah.
weekend. And it brought me
We were
back
at
to
the
feeling
same
good.
virtual conference, by the way. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really awesome, wasn't it? And that's why I wanted to protect my energy for that space.
Right. So that you can be the best version of yourself now, and for your children and your significant other, your partner.
Yes. And it's important for my children to see that, because I know this is difficult for them,
Yes.
the households. And I know they talk about us because my kids will come back and tell me.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I know it's hard, and I try to remain that energy for them to see, you know what? Mom is okay, and you guys are going to be okay too.
And the kids will see through the stuff too. That's one of the
As they
things
age-
that
as they develop.
as they get more understanding and see the dynamics in place, they'll realize what's working and what isn't.
Yes. And that's my goal. And they're 8 and 6 now. When my ex left, they were 4 and 2.
Yeah.
So
that's
a tough thing. Well, you Vita, we love the energy you give out.
Yeah.
If someone,
thank you.
If someone wanted to get a piece of that energy from you, how does someone reach you and be a part of your journey?
Well, you can, if you are going through a divorce or separation, I do have a private Facebook group. It's called Moving On and Letting Go, a support group for divorced and separated women. You do have to answer some questions. So answer it, and then you can let me know if you heard it here on this podcast. So I'll know it's you. So you can find me there. You can also find me inside my membership called Move On and Let Go. That's opening up at the end of August, but there is a wait list. And inside that membership, we do exactly what we talked about. We go through the stages of the law of attraction and learning not to focus so much on the past and the pain, but to create that future going forward and gaining that confidence and courage to speak your truth, so that when you see your ex in another relationship or you run into him on the street, you're not going to walk into a wall.
Right.
You're going to be energized. So inside the membership, we go deeper, and it's all action taking steps. So you learn the things you want, and then you take the steps to move forward. And you can also find me on my website at www.heartbreaktohappy.com. I have a whole resource library where we talk about the law of attraction in there too.
It's Heartbreak to Happy.
Heartbreaktohappy.com.
That's great.
That's
Love
great.
it.
I bet you there'll be a lot of people Googling law of attraction right now too.
Yeah. Check it out, y'all. Come back refreshed. Come back refreshed. It's Abraham Hicks is our go-to place, at least.
Yeah.
And of course, Jeff and I offer the similar kind of thing. We don't go into law of attraction so much, but we do help people in those toxic relationships that need a supportive community. So we'll be launching ours in a couple of weeks.
Yay.
So look for that as well. And we also help people who have no clue about what happens in the mediation process. As certified family law mediators, we can help you know exactly what to expect.
And difference of mediation and divorce.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to have you talk to my group about that, because I see that
forward to it.
Yeah.
so often. And I've been to mediation twice in my divorce. And
it's
very
scary the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we take all the fear out of it for you.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest.
You're
It's been
so
delightful
welcome.
talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
It's
Vita.
been my pleasure. Thank you.
And you can reach out to us at poppyandjeff.com. That's POPPYANDGEOFF to get more nuggets from our podcast articles, or just reach out to us for a 30-minute free consult. Thanks,
So
Joe.
thank you for being a
Thanks,
guest on
Vita.
the Relationship Restaurant.
Thank
Until next time, we're Poppy and Jeff. See you there.